Hey, let's just come back tomorrow. I'm not rocking with this. But the door's unlocked? Only Ninjuno would do this. You know, so rich he don't care about robbers. Am I muted? Hey, wait a minute. That looked like the girl. The girl on your Rage's stream, the LARPer.
Elaborate, Bilu.
It can't be her doppel because we're not on Scribble Knots. I'ma say it's the real one. It's gotta be the girl that just got shot. Okay, we moving that fast. Nah, she dying for real. Yeah, I'm listening. I'm still listening. Come on, get it out. Okay. What's Dakota's doing on this island right now?
Howdy there, Shin.
She sounds too familiar.
What does Marionette do in FNAF 2?
This only the first episode. I better be Subaru. Steins Gate ReZero, I want neither. Give me summertime rendering right now. I'm lying, both of those are peak as well. But summertime rendering was too overlooked since they decided to lock it up on Disney Plus with The Incredibles and Bold. But I'll be bringing it forth to y'all and showing y'all peak. We see this guy talking to blonde blazer in a swimsuit and she's telling him, oh, I got a present for you. And after he rubs his eyes, she's like, tell everyone I said hey, cause guess what? I can't say hi to them. This guy's name is Shinpei Ajiro. When he finally touches down on the island, he sees his sister Mio Kafune come riding down the hill. She falls in the water, and 10 years ago Shin's parents died. So the reason Ushio and Mio are his sisters is because their father took him in, and the reason Shin is at this island is to go to the funeral of his sister Ushio. He overhears people talking saying, oh yeah, nah, the waves didn't take her out. You thought it was Poseidon who killed that girl? But before he hears them finish their sentence, a flash comes out of nowhere. His childhood friend So comes running up to him and he's saying, hit me with that arrow, and I'm sorry I couldn't save her that day. But like those other people said, it really wasn't Poseidon. No, it wasn't Korra either. There was no water bending involved. But he also tells him, you see that girl over there that's not talking, staying to herself? That's Shiori, the girl Ushio tried to save, and ever since that day she hasn't spoken. So after the funeral they go back home and we see a Mio standing outside of their house.
Yo, dude, why are you standing at your house? That's kind of weird. Just go inside. You got a key or something.
And peep how the cop is riding a bike. No one is scared of this guy. If I hear sirens coming after me but I see a bike chasing me, he might as well be on the Memphis Mule. If you know, you know. But So calls him and tells him, oh yeah, she had ligature marks on her neck. But Mio enters the room and gives him a necklace, and it's the same one he gave to her years ago. And she says, I'll never forgive the person that did this. Hold on, person? But Tetsu, the cop from last night, says, you guys know about Koba Mart? The entire family disappeared. And after Mio hears this, she runs away. But once Shin catches up to Mio, this old man named Nezu is telling them shadow sickness is real. Once you see your shadow, you will die. But if you go to the mountain and you go to the shrine and get purified, you're good. And we find out that Mio saw Ushio's shadow. So they decide to go up to the mountain to get purified. But Mio looks in the forest and she sees that little girl Shiori. But they lose track of her, and that's when they hear a gunshot. And they see the woman that was on the ferry. And dang, can you get out what you're trying to say? She's saying, and she dies. But that's when we see the shadow with the gun to Mio's head, and she kills Mio too. And then she points the gun to Shin and kills him as well. But we see Mio holding Shiori in the water, and So trying to use CPR to bring Ushio back to life. And that's when Shin wakes up and he's back on the ferry. But he puts two and two together and he's like, oh shoot, this is like a book I just read. But when he steps foot on the island, he sees Mio coming down the hill yet again on the bike. And after he says, why didn't you use your brakes? They find out that the brakes were cut. And back at the funeral, he says it's a repeat. He gets scanned and notices Shiori staring. But at home, he steps outside for fresh air and he hears Tetsu speaking to Mio. And this Mio starts stabbing him out of nowhere. After she kills him, she creates a new shadow and that shadow becomes Tetsu. But Shin starts to get a phone call. And that's when he sees Mio above him and she stabs him. And as Shin is bleeding out on the ground, you know what snooping and eavesdropping gets you? The death penalty. And he's low-key not lying. I know you guys have been seeing that ex-CIA agent that talks about all his stories on TikTok. And as Shin is watching himself die, that's when Ushio hugs him and she's saying keep Mio safe. So when Shin resets the day yet again, he starts from the island. And next time Mio comes riding down the hill, he steps out ready to save her and gets knocked in the ocean, and he doesn't know how to swim like Sonic. But that's when we see the girl from the boat, and she's looking at the funeral saying there's a lot of them here. But Shin calls Totsumura in this loop to tell him, oh, there's a fight going down at the club, you better break that up. He goes to the club. But Shin decides to catch the shadow of Mio lacking this time with setting up a camera watching her. He shows Mio the video and he's like, yeah, that's your shadow. You got shadow sickness. You should probably look out for her. And Mio says, I think a shadow might have killed Ushio too. But when Shin's talking to Mio, he realizes that Shiori saw her shadow in the same way. So he decides to go to the Koba Mart to see if anything's wrong. When he gets there, it happens to be closed, but Shiomi arrives and she says, oh, I know the Koba family like this. I know you're trying to get that green tea ice cream. That's low-key my favorite. While Shiomi's out searching for the Koba family, Shin notices the print left by people when they get zapped by shadow. And his own self from the bird's eye view is dogging on him saying, you could have saved them, but you did nothing because you're sorry. But he can't find Shiori's shadow print, so when he goes upstairs, he finally flips flips the light switch on and gets clipped at the same time. And that's when Shiori's asking him, why did you ask me what you asked me yesterday? He was asking her if she ever saw someone that looked like her. She's saying, is something wrong with me? Do I look funny? Do I sound funny? Like, what's going on here? She starts transforming into a shadow, but that's when Shiomi comes in clutch, turning on the light and literally saving Shin's life, because who knows what would have happened to him. But now Shin decides to look for the woman he saw back on the ferry, so he goes searching at hotels around town. He's given a clear-cut description on her down to the pimple on her left cheek under her eye just by 3 centimeters. But it's not until he says, oh yeah, Bazoinga. And he's like, oh yeah, her? She came through. But Shin returns to the bistro, and that's when Totsamura walks in. He's like, yeah, you were lying, but here's Ushio's phone. She gave the phone to Totsamura just in case anything happened, and he's saying it's like she could see into the future. But that's when So walks in. Shin explains to So everything about the shadows, and So gets suspicious, so they come up with code words to let each other know that they're not shadows. But as Shin is trying to log into her phone, that's when So busts in. He says it's time for the festival. Put some pants on, you can't go in your drawers, and it's time to go. So when they get to the festival, they're making the show look beautiful. So is saying, I'ma tell Mio my feelings, and Tokiko's being a W wing woman. This is So's sister, by the way. But while all of this is going on, Shin sees blonde hair, and he decides to follow her all the way to the beach. And it's Ushio Kafune herself. But Ushio doesn't even realize she's a shadow, but she starts remembering how she died. And Shin's like, hold on, I know she's a shadow, but you know, she still does kind of look like Ushio. She just says she loves me, and now she wants to explore the festival with me. I can make an exception. But while exploring the festival, he's like, you died 2 days ago, so they go into hiding. And after he interrogates her and she answers everything correctly, he's like, dang, this is Ushio. But that's when Mio calls him. Ushio takes the phone and speaks, and even Mio caught this. But that's when Shin makes it to them, and he says Mesopotamia, letting them know that it's the real Shin. But So decides to spit his game to Mio and get shot down instantly. But that's when Ushio arrives in a disguise, and she's trying to say that she's from Pretty Cure. No, you're not, because they take the mask off and they see it's Ushio. And Mio isn't happy to see her because she's saying, you're her shadow. You are not Ushio. You'll never be Ushio. And Shin starts twisting her arm. But when Shin starts glitching, they're like, hey, this isn't the real Shin. And then we see what happened to the real Shin. After he got this call and he was running up to where they were, he saw a bunch of Zap people on the ground and saw Mio killing. Mio flash steps and chokes him, and she's asking him, how did you get me on video? And after she throws him to the ground, that's when we see Shadow Shin, and he scans Shin to get more of his memories and stops Mio from killing him, telling her that he will loot. And he decides to go up to Shin's friends himself. And after she breaks his arm, Shin is still trying to crawl up throughout the pain, and she says, oh, I'm gonna break your leg too. But out of nowhere, she gets shot with a shotgun. And that's when we see the woman from the ferry before. But Shin gets up and he notices that the shadow is gone, and that's when it comes sliding up behind this woman. And after she dodges the stab, she shoots it in the shadow. And this took the shadow off of the map, the first shadow that we have seen get defeated. But he asks her what her name is. She says Ranoske Nagumo, and this is the same author that made Swamp Man. And she says, I came all this way to save you. But she teaches Shin how to identify shadows. She says, look at the shadow, that's where their true body is. They don't let you step on it, and they also have the ability to scan and copy things, and that's how they get information. And that's when Shin remembers the shadow saying that mother will be awake soon. But Shin tells Nagumo to go to the top of the shrine with him, and up there he sees Tokiko in the ground covered in blood. And she says, I didn't intend for this. And she ends up getting killed too. And after Shin stares and he looks up, he sees a shadow with 4 arms, and behind him there's a pile of bodies, and he's just counting the shadows. And that's when he comes across a shadow So stabbing the real So in the head. After the shadow So tries to kill Mio next, he gets shot in the head. But this 4-armed shadow mimics her shotgun and shoots at her, and she sees this and manages to dodge the fatal attack, but she's on the ground. She's basically out of commission. And that's when he asks who he is, so he decides to wrap him up like Indiana Jones and bring him to him. And he says, yo, your eye, that's the same eye that mother has, the eye that's able to control time. But after Shin gets thrown to the ground, that's when he looks up and he sees the shadow Ushio saying to protect Mio. And as they crawl to each other right when he's about to touch her hand, she gets zapped into nothingness. And we see this happening to the entire island. And that's when we see a red light in the sky, and Nagumo calls out its name. She says Hane. But Shin turns around and says, shoot me right now, I can restart this. The 4 arms decides to try and kill Ranoske, but Ushio comes out of the shadow, punching him in the face. And Ranoske says, just tell me your name and I'll make sure to save you. But after she takes him off the map and he restarts, he's with Ushio again. And she's saying the 24th is gonna be a feat to beat, but I know you could do it. And we see Ushio waking up on a beach, meaning that she got loot back too. But this time around, we see the day from Ryanoske's point of view. Right off the ferry, she already met a shadow, but she hears Mio ride past calling out for Shin. But she turns over and sees Ushio's sign for the funeral, and she realizes that the person on the ferry screamed out Ushio, so she decides to go into the funeral herself. But when she enters the building, we find out that her name is Hizuru Minakata, and the person she's talking to is Masahito. He's saying, I haven't seen you in 14 years. I wish I could have made that 14 more. We find out in her past she went went to Bistro Kafune all the time, and that's where she met Ushio. She decides to leave before meeting Shin because she doesn't know if she could trust him, but Alan stops her to tell her Ushio had ligature marks on her neck. It was like that time 14 years ago with Ranoske. So she rushes back into the coffin, flips it open, and hold on. Who's doing this in the middle of a funeral? And after she wipes off the makeup, she sees the ligature marks. And after Hizuru decides to leave for good, she gets stopped by her childhood friend Asako. And as she's talking to her, she breaks down in tears saying, I wish Ushio didn't have to go. And as this is going on, you can see Hizuru's foot in her shadow and it's splitting. But we see Hizuru talking to Nezu, the guy we met in the first loop, and she's explaining to him, I think all 3 of the Kobas are shadows. Mio saved Shadow Shiori, and that shadow replaced the entire family. But back on Shin's side of things, he's deciding to carry out the day like usual. But when they leave the funeral, the Koba family is speaking to him, and they're asking him about shadows. But Shin looks down and he sees an ant go into their shadow, and even they start looking at him funny. But he plays it off well, saying it's just a sickness he's heard about. But this is the first time I've seen useful fan service. He says, yo, you know, yesterday were you wearing, white underpants? And she tells him she was, and that's how he finds out that she was copied yesterday. But we see the shadow Mio, and she creates a shadow Alan. But Shin has to ask everybody 2 questions. Do you know about shadows? And then his second question, have you seen anybody with melons? But it's not until Alan says, oh, she actually gave me this, but I can't contact her because I don't know how to get through the code. And after Shin breaks the code to end up calling her phone, he calls Nezu himself, and he's saying, go back to the funeral home alone. But Hizuru put up an out of order sign, and when Shadow Alan enters the bathroom, Hizuru flushes the toilet. So when the Shadow Alan opens up the door, she slams his shadow with a hammer. We see that Nezu snipes Shin's shadow just to make sure he wasn't a shadow. But Shin meets up with Nezu and Hizuru, and she's asking him, so how do you know my true name? And wow, she's just acting like she's the smartest person on the planet because she says, oh, you must have been going through a time loop, huh? And Shin's crying because he can finally get it off his chest. Yes, he's been going through a time loop. But we find out that Hizuru is not just one person. She says the person that told you my name was my brother. And we also find out more about the Shadow's sickness. The Shadows target family members, and Hizuru lets Shin know, oh yeah, I took Alan's shadow off the map, so Alan is immune. And we find out what happened 14 years ago to Ranoske, and he had the same ligature marks on his neck that Ushio had. But before they move on with any future plans, she says she has to handle something at the Koba Mart real quick. So when she ties her hair up, that's when she becomes Ranoske. And Shiori's like, cool, let her in. Why is Shiori calling the shots? So Ranoske knocks the head off of Asako, and when the Shadow Dad bum rushes with chopsticks, absolutely no thought behind this play. No look hit with a slam into the ground. Nothing was going on in his head, but he sees a flash of himself dying. And that's when Asako enters a new boss stage, but he blocks the attack and kicks the Shadow back. In midair, he kills the Shadow with the hammer. And she's putting on the front saying, oh, why did you kill my parents' hammer to the Shadow? But he doesn't kill her, and Shiori's shadow ends up pinning Ranoske to the ground. And she's trying to interrogate her, but she's saying, I'm not telling you nothing. I don't see any food laid out in front of me that would even get me to snitch. And as he stabs himself, this damages Shiori's shadow as well. Shiori jumps up the stairs looking like a demon child, and while Ranoske is going around the bedroom, Shiori's standing behind her. And he's like, if you're gonna copy me right now, you'll be stunned, and that's when I'll attack. So she decides to turn into a Splatoon character and flee the scene. But Nezu already has his nail gun loaded, and he's shooting at her, but he's missing each and every single shot. And when Shiori almost makes it out, Shin comes out from hiding, and he grabs her and pins her to the ground. She hits him with a mean chomp on the arm, but they shoot her shadow to pin her to the ground, and that's when they interrogate her. Shin asks her if she killed Ushio. I killed that girl. I strangled her myself. And Shin's getting ready to punch woman beater Shin, but she says this summer is the end, so good luck. And Ranoske takes her off the mat, but they go back to Shin's place to catch Shadow Mio. But that's when Shin walks in and sees Mio's shadow holding the knife. Oh nah, it's just Mio. But that's when he hears a stomach grumble, and Ushio is standing right behind him. But Ushio tells him something terrible is happening on the 24th, and that's when he realizes that she looped back with him. So when he brings her to his room, he reaches for his knife. He's like, I could kill her right now. But while she's eating, he has a flashback of her saving his life from the Ben 10 monster, and he goes further than that and has a flashback of when he was leaving the island and she said, I want to eat your curry before you go. So he decides not to kill her, and that's when she says, I'm gonna help you stop the event that happens the 24th. And that's when Mio opens the door to the room. Nah, it's just the real Mio. But we do see the shadow sneaking into the room, but that's when Mio leaves, and she re-enters the room in completely different clothes. He has this prison school expression trying to hide Ushio, but she runs in with her knife and ends up stabbing Ushio. After she gets a headbutt sending her down to the ground, she splatoons back to her knife, stabbing Ushio's shadow and splitting her arm. Shin throws a bag because what is he planning to do? And he's like, I know I can't win this fight, so he opens up the curtain so Nezu can get a clear look in. She decides to go in for the kill on Shin, so when she gets closer, she gets her head sniped off, and Shin stabs her shadow and takes her off the mat. But that's when Ranoske enters the room with his hammer, and he's gonna kill Ushio, but Shin stops the attack, and he tells her, chill, she's not like the other shadow, she saved my life that day of the festival. But when Shadow Ushio asks if Mio's still okay, she's like, alright, she got some humanity to her, but they can't patch up her arm because she needs the main body to copy it and heal herself. But we find out that Ushio actually told Ranoske to come to this island. chilling. But the reason Shadow Mio went inside this time is because she knew what happened to Shiori at Koba Mart. But the next day at Bistro Kafune, when So arrived, Shin decides to let him know the truth. Or Ushio, I guess, because she's not even trying to hide and she tells him everything. And the Shadow Ushio gets into Ushio's phone due to fingerprint, and there's a video waiting for them to watch. And on this video, we see Ushio talking, and she's saying, if you're watching this video, I'm dead. But hey, look, this is my shadow right here. And while they're watching the video, the Shadow Ushio starts getting her memories back. We go into the past of the beach cleanup day, and we hear Ushio get scanned, and when she looks up, her shadow is standing right there. And after seeing this, Ushio decided to believe Shiori about her shadow sighting, and the two Ushios decide to team up and investigate and go to the mountain. They arrive at the old hospital that So's family owned, but that's when they turn around and see a shadow. The shadow uses the flash to copy Ushio and become Ushio, and after it rushes but misses the attack, the Shadow Ushio gets grabbed and pinned to a tree. The real Ushio is attacking from behind but doing no damage since it's a shadow, but when she accidentally hits the shadow sends her flying back, and the shadow catches the broken weapon to stab the Shadow Ushio, but she uses her hair to cut through the shadow's grip, freeing herself. And then after the shadow tries to run, she hops on her Splatoon and chases it. Once it makes it to the fence, she slices through the shadow and slices through the entire fence as well, defeating the shadow. And we also learn that shadows will die if they don't kill their main copy. And after finishing the video, the Shadow Ushio gets her memories and powers back, and she decides to show them what truly happened the day she died. They were all at the beach like it was a 12-episode slice of life anime that you watched before quarantine, and you can't name the main character or the title of the show. And before they can even teach Shiori how to swim, they notice that she's gone. And Ushio and her shadow already had a plan for this, but they get on their sprint 100-meter dash, and I'm betting all my funds on Ushio beating them in a race, because look at how she's moving. And she sees the Shadow Shiori dragging Shiori down. After the Shadow Ushio cuts off her grip, she tries to take the real Shiori back to the surface, but the Shadow Shiori's crawling back on. But Ushio tears the Shadow Shiori off of the Shadow Ushio, and Shiori's shadow decides to bring her down to the bottom of the ocean. And right when the Shadow Ushio is about to make it to the surface with Shiori saving her life, the Shadow Shiori is back. She puts her hand on her face and she starts killing her, but Mio and So finally made it to the spot by the time this happens, so the Shadow Shiori just gets rid of the real Shiori and goes to the surface. So saying he's gonna get to work, I've never seen him this serious before, and Ushio saying the same thing. But the Shiori reaches out and grabs Shin's arm. She's talking about some "I found you," and she starts transforming into the isekai lolly that we saw before, and Shin realizes that he has a print on his arm. But they decide to go to the old clinic where it all happened, but when they start their adventure to the old clinic, So pulls up like he's ready to play for the San Diego Padres, and since Ushio got her powers back, she can sense other shadows. But when they walk into the next room, they see a weird statue, but they find out that it's Hiruko. It's the god of good luck. But Shin notices a small crack in the side of the room, and he tells her to go through it and use her flash ability so they can see what's going on in there, and she finds a keyhole. And Shin's saying the statue has a little baby bump on it, maybe there's something in there. And when Ushio scans it and copies what's inside using a strand of her hair, and after they open up the door, they find a sewer leading down into the depths. Ushio says she senses a shadow that's so dangerous she's getting a bad feeling, but they also sense another shadow nearby them, and after he throws a rock to move in on the shadow ends up sniffing them out. So he tries to shoot at it, but he misses every shot, and it eventually rolls over to So. So hits it with his baseball bat, but the shadow goes inside of the baseball bat, but Shin focuses up and pins it to the ground. Ushio comes through with the final hit, taking it off of the mat, and we find more out about the copies. If somebody copies a weapon, the original has to be gone for the copy to work, but after they explore further, that's when Ushio says there's shadows all around us. But back on the surface, Hizuru and Nezu are finally entering the sewer, but Shin and his friends are running because those shadows are on him. So misses the baseball bat swing, denting the baseball bat. Ushio splits through a few, and Shin clutches when she's about to get caught off guard, but they notice that she's injured and she can't fight anymore, so he uses axe spray in a match to create a flamethrower. But back on the surface again, while Mio is trying to reach Shin, she notices that Shiori's hair tie is on the ground, and when she looks up, she sees Shiori herself saying, "Shin's over here, just follow me real quick." Yeah, follow the dark shadow late at night when you're already suspicious of her being a shadow. But nah, I'd go inside, I'd go upstairs, I'd hop on the La Caja, I don't even have one, I'd get on El Cinco. But she runs into Tetsu, and they notice that Shiori went down in the sewer, but he's saying, "I got a date in town, I'm not rocking with this. If you save that girl, you'll be all over the news. You won't just have one date, you'll have 1,000. He flash steps down, but when Shin and his crew continue advancing through the cave, everything around them is a shadow. But that's when they hear a voice saying, "Stay right there." They look up and they see Tokiko herself. But Nezu tells Ranoske at this moment about Hiruko's grotto. It only showed up when the tide was low, and Hizuru always had a feeling that the shadows hid in the sewers. And eventually Mio and Tetsu make it to the gate, and they see Shiori on the other side. She hits him with a quick flashbang to open up the gate, making them think she's just some innocent child. But back on Tokiko's side, she's saying that she was out here to look for some damaged goods, and Ushio is that damaged good. And as she's walking closer, Shin is cooking up. He's like, "Oh, this plan is smarter than anything Jimmy Neutron could come up with." She gets too close, he shoots her shadow to pin her down, but nothing happens. So obviously they drop their weapons and let her take Ushio, because what are they gonna do without Ushio? And Tokiko's just dogging on Soul, saying, you're so dumb. Dad would never let you know about this because you're dumb. Guess what's going on right now? I bet you wouldn't know because you're dumb. But we see Ranoske and Nezu, and they come face to face with Shiori. And Ranoske notices that this person standing in front of her is Hane. So she tries to flash, but Ranoske shoots and the attack is blocked, and the forearms reflects the bullets, killing Nezu. And we find out that Ranoske can see 2 seconds into the future. And after he lets off some shots that all get blocked, he makes a break for it but gets shot in the process. And Tokiko brings them to Hiruko herself. She copied the original Hane, and she's the mother of all shadows. And Shinpei says, so you killed Ushio, you killed Mio, shoot, you killed Shiori. She turns into Shiori, and then she hits him with Conqueror's Haki, but then she gets stopped because she was about to eat Shinpei on the spot. There's a death every 4 years at this island, an accident if that's what you want to call it. And yeah, we feed her those bodies so she can get her strength back. Look, she's about to eat Ushio right now. We find out that they didn't cremate Ushio, they created a copy of her bones, turned those into ashes and gave them to the Kafune family. But Shin comes up with the plan because he knows whenever a shadow flashes they get stunned for a little bit. But Tokiko and Soul get into an argument, and Tokiko saying Dad didn't want you to know about this because yes, you are dumb and we're doing this so Mom can live. So when Hiruko goes to zap Ushio's body, Shin calls for Ushio's nail gun and he shoots the shadow that's holding Ushio. And after the other one comes through with a punch, she dodges it, making it punch the other shadow, and she splits through that one easily and gets her body back and scans the information. But Tokiko says, why are you guys trying to fight shadows? You can't beat them, they're built different. Ushio says, you're not like that, shut up, don't underestimate us humans. And that's when Hiruko turns the person behind her into a giant shadow monster. And after she bum rushes, Shin is thinking, I'ma have Ushio kill me right now. But Ushio goes running past Shin herself. After she ice skates, she gets her hair ready for the assault. She dodges the perilous attack and splits the shadow's arm off. But she gets kicked and sent flying back into some rocks, and a follow-up with an overhead axe kick sends Ushio flying back even more. But after Ushio recovers, she doesn't only recover her footing, she recovers her arm as well. And after she dashes in one more time, Shin says the same thing, don't underestimate us humans, and she hits it with a punch to his shadow, completely destroying the shadow beast. And Shin's standing right at Hiruko with the nail gun, and he's getting ready to shoot, but he gets his weapon and his finger sliced off in a heartbeat. And that's when the forearm says, chill out, but Shin, you better stop doing what you're doing, buddy. And this is when Tokiko found out that the shadows betrayed them. But yeah, they say they don't need her anymore and go for a shot, but So takes the bullet for her. But Ranoske is still in the game. He turns into Hizuru, and we see Tetsu there.
Oh, you're Miss Bazoinga.
Super bazoinga.
And then Hizuru tells him to take her to the room where everything's going down so she can take Shin off the mat. But Hiruko tells Ushio to walk to her no issue or she's gonna kill Mio. And Hiruko takes Shinpei's eye right out of its socket. But it responds because, you know, she can't take it just like that. It wouldn't be that easy. And she decides to rewrite Ushio's brain to make her work as a shadow for her. And that's when the four arms grab Shin and tells him, oh yeah, your eye's actually crazy. You know, you can look at all these other worlds and turn them into the reality you want to see. But he knows that he can't activate it unless he dies. So do you know what he does? He crushes Mio's head and he says, we're gonna keep you here in despair. But that's when Tetsu arrives with Hizuru and she shoots Forearm's head off and she goes to kill Shinpei too, but it gets blocked and Hizuru herself ends up dying. But since this creates distance between Shin and Forearms, he takes the supplement that So was talking about from before, Omni-Man. And yeah, Forearms are saying there's nothing we can do, he's going to die. But on the other side of things, Hiruko is saying get Ushio now because she's rewriting the rewriting of her brain and she's saying that she must be the egg. You gotta kill her now, she'll be a threat. That's when they jump back through the timeline and end up in that space area again. And when they arrive back to the 22nd, they're further in time yet again. He's at the point where he's talking to Hizuru and Nezu for the first time and Ushio standing right next to him. But Nezu ups the hunting rifle instantly and he's saying that's a shadow behind you. But since she said thank goodness Hizuru that you're still alive, Hizuru's like, yo, don't kill her. But after Hizuru and Ushio shake hands, she transfers her memories to Hizuru and Nezu. But when it comes to the plan, Shin is saying he doesn't know what happens after the 24th, and that's when Ushio says we should catch Shiori herself. But we see So talking to his father saying that he has some questions. He's like, see me at 10, you got 5 minutes, bro. But we see So's dad on the phone with Forearms. But Shin and his crew decide to go back to the Koba market to take Shiori off the map, and everything goes the same. The same words when Ranoske enters the room, the same thing when he knocks Asuko's head off, and we find out that whatever Ushio copies, she can carry through the loop. And that's when Shin says, oh yeah, give him some time, bro. Shiori will be coming out of that balcony. And it's Ranoske who came out of the balcony, one arm. And all he can say is this loop isn't like the last loop. And he gets his head crushed. And that's when we find out that Hiruko also has the ability to loop back because of her eye as well. And the mark on Shin's arm tracks him wherever he goes. Nezu shoots 3 shots at Forearms, but it does nothing and he gets stabbed in the face. And that's when he runs through coming for Shinpei, but Ushio cuts off his head in an instant. But this time on the 22nd, it's raining. And that's when he sees Ranoske and Hizuru walk by. They teleported 14 years in the past. We're seeing Shin's parents, and Hizuru tells Ranoske and Asuko, I made a friend, y'all want to go meet her? She says, just wait for that light to turn on, but it never turns on, and Asuko and Ranoske decide to leave because they don't believe Hizuru. And that's when we see that her friend was Hane. But we see Hizuru talking to Hane, and Hizuru just spent time playing with her. She gave her snacks. They played house. But one day when Hizuru cut her finger, Hane looked at it and got a taste for blood. And when Hizuru was coming back to visit, this is where she met Nezu. But Ranoske decides to look for Hizuru, and that's when he sees Hane sitting outside. But when Hane turns around, she has blood on her mouth. Shinpei screams out Miss Nagumo, and Nagumo actually turns around and looks, but she sees nobody because obviously nobody's there. And that's when she hears a flash and walks to see Ranoske dead and Hane over him. But she has a meltdown which sends out her eye and the information that she just copied, and she sent that information into Hizuru. But two shadows arrive, and one starts running at Hizuru, and Nezu throws a knife to get the shadow away from her. But the shadow flashes and copies him and turns into him, and it ends up slashing him in the eye. But that's when Ranoske takes over Hizuru's body and takes Nezu and flies through the sky. And the only reason he can do this is because he's technically a shadow. Obviously this has drawbacks because Hizuru just got injured. But when the shadow jumps at Ranoske, he takes the knife out of its head and throws it at its shadow, taking it off the map. And when Nezu's shadow attacks, he catches it, flips it over, and stabs its shadow, taking both shadows off the map, no issue. But when Hizuru was saying her goodbyes to Asako and she left the island, she saw Hane standing on a rock, and Hane said, "I'm gonna let you go this time because you was cool, you gave me some food, we played house together, but next time I see you, it's chips." And this is when Shinpei comes back to the original timeline, and he says, "Yeah, do not go into Koba Mart, you will die." And Hane comes up with the plan to continue killing Shinpei because if the time jumps forward enough, he won't be able to loop again. But Shin's crew goes to the school and they discuss a plan on stopping the shadows, and Mio finally makes amends with Ushio because Ushio showed everybody her memories because Shadow Mio takes him out the game and picks up his hunting rifle. After they finally get everybody hyped to go, Shin is back at his house. But we see that Shin got shot through Ushio's memories, and Shin comes to the conclusion that he can only loop back one more time because if he loops back again, the time will pass him.
Barrier! Shin, take that AirPod out. It's time to lock in, young man.
Hold up, I can't cut the song off at the transition.
Yeah, dude, you know I can kill you right now and you're standing face to face. That takes some balls for real.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I got tired of waiting. I just want to fight face to face.
Don't blame me when you fall off the face of time, buddy. You're in Kiri issues right now.
But when Shadow Mio dashes in with her knife going in for the stab, all Shin does real quick is flex his rolly, and then he disappears. We see that Ushio is holding Shin and they run to safety, but Shadow Mio chases them. Out of nowhere, a gunshot hits the shadow under Shide. Also, I don't know if I said it, but Shide is 4 arms. But it does no damage, meaning that this guy is not a shadow. But as Shadow Mio is platooning to chase Ushio, and Nezu's just picking off each and every single shadow grunt. But Shide picks up a single rock and he stares at Nezu, and he flicks the rock through the scope and through his ear as well. But as Shinpei and Ushio run inside, they run past Ranoske himself. However, outside, Mio's headed straight for Nezu, and he can't shoot because she's bobbing and weaving, and that's when So pulls out his nail gun, and he may be missing his shots, but he distracted her. But Tokiko uses a shadow to punch her in the face, sending her flying back. And back inside, when Ranoske is picking off the shadow number 89 jumps in and goes for an attack, but he dodges it with a jump and takes it off the map. He dodges the next one with a back handspring and takes it off the map. After he lands, that's when Asako runs in and says his name, and Hane tells Asako to go to her left, and she dodges the shotgun shot from Ranoske. But Shide and Hane are running in, and Ranoske sees Shinpei dying, so he decides to take the bullet for Shinpei instead. But after they get ready for the finishing shot with a shotgun, and we find out that Hane can negate this 2-second ability, a shot comes out of nowhere, and Nezu's still shooting strong without the scope. But on Tokiko's side of things, her shadow's cooking up Mio. She can't do anything, they're at a stalemate. So Hane tells the shadow, "You don't belong to Tokiko anymore." But out of nowhere, that same shadow punches through Mio yet again, and that's when Hane turns and looks and sees Ushio herself. So Hane tells Shide to shoot, but he misses the shot and only gets her hair, and he turns into a monster and starts chasing her throughout the hallway. And after one of the stray shadows punches Mio again, she decides to form from his arm this time, and she uses that to get close to Tokiko. But that's when Mio and So come through, because Mio lights her up in a heartbeat, and So readies his nail gun. But in the gym itself, Shide is attacking Ushio, but she's dodging each and every single attack. The last one may cut her on the cheek a little, but when she lands on the stage, Tetsu turns on the lights, and all Ushio has to say is, "So y'all shadows think you're above all of us? Guess what? Turn around. Shinpei's even higher." And she drops her hair from the sky, turning it into gas, and all Shinpei does is throw a match and explode both Hane and Shide. While they're burning though, Hane splits off from Shide, but Tetsu's shooting at her to distract her. That's when we see Shin has the piece of hair in his hand and it turns into a gun. He shoots Hane's shadow, damaging her neck and bringing her down to the ground. And that's when Ushio comes out of the wall and grabs her arm and starts hacking her. But she's saying, no, don't hack me. Be sad for me. I just took this body because I wanted to live with her family. But that's when Shide reaches his hand out of the fire and grabs Ushio, dragging her into the fire. Shin tries to shoot, but he gets lit up in a heartbeat. And Shide is just pinning Ushio to the ground, burning her. And that's when he says, if I kill you before Shin can loot, I don't think you're gonna loot back with him, buddy. But we see the shell necklace and she turns into that and she punches clean through Shide. And as she starts erasing him, we see that there's a human inside of him. But Hane starts screaming out of nowhere. Shin says he can't breathe anymore, and that's when the glass breaks and both Hane and Shide are out of the room in a heartbeat. She erased all the oxygen in the room. And yeah, both of them got messed up. I mean, Hane's just laying here. She looks like she's basically dead. And we find out that Shin had a bulletproof vest on, so he didn't even die. They didn't take a W, but they also didn't take a L because no one died. And Ushio's gonna cut the link from Shadow Mio to Hane so they can have a new ally. But Shadow Mio tells them that she was scanned for Mio at the wake, and she cut her brakes not to kill her just so she'd be in the hospital. But Shadow Mio tells us that shadows directly created from Hane can create one extra shadow, but those shadows that they create cannot spread. And Shadow Mio wasn't created to kill Mio, but to find the broken Ushio, and shadows only have a 7-day period before they die if they don't kill their original self. And since So has his 5-minute meeting with his dad, they decide to follow him and go with. But when they go to the clinic, everything in the house is missing, like they're moving out. But Ushio feels a shadow, so they end up going into the clinic itself. But that's when Tokiko goes into a secret room, and that's where Ushio's body was being held, but it's no longer there. And Ranoske himself says, I feel a presence of a shadow, and Ushio says it's right there. And that's when we see So and Tokiko's mom choking their dad. So Ushio just rewrites her wiring and knocks her out. And after So uses CPR to bring him back to life, their dad is saying, kill them, I could get back in Hane's good graces. And when she doesn't do that, he decides to disarm So, catch his weapon, and shoot Tokiko. But Tokiko ends up being Shadow Mio. So hits him with a mean right, and he's just saying, kill me, I'm not gonna tell you guys anything. And when Shadow Mio scans him, this is when we find out he's immune to shadow sickness. And that's when the shadow of Negoro appears with Ushio's body. And she's like, oh yeah, I wanted to let you Hishigata's know, thank you for your service. And oh yeah, Shin, you too, there's nothing you can do, so give up. But then Dr. Hishigata says, alright, I'll just tell y'all everything. And we find out that his wife was a shadow the entire time. And the reason he doesn't want them to kill Hane, because that means if they kill Hane, every shadow is disappearing. And Hane's true goal is to turn everybody into a shadow so she can go back to her homeland. And after Dr. Hishigata's wife hears this, she's like, yo, you're an idiot. And that's when Dr. Hishigata shows Shin a list. He says everybody on this list was fed to Hane. Your parents' names are up here, bud. But when Shin asks for the true identity of Shide, he just shows him a photo and says that was her very first protector, the first Hishigata and the founder of this clinic. And we see Ushio talking to Hizuru about the day 14 years ago, and she says, when Hane's eye split off, I think that was my shadow. Mio's shadow's trying to be a W wing woman for Mio, but later at night, Nezu wakes up and says he has to do something, and Ushio says, alright, bet, but I gotta come too. And they go to his house, and Ushio says she senses a shadow in the basement, and Nezu's wife is a shadow. He said 14 years ago she became a shadow, but I couldn't kill her and I need some closure. And he gets his closure. But during the next day, they go shadow hunting to weaken forces, and Ushio and Shin have to go after their childhood teacher. And Ushio's hair got restored because Mio found some strands of hair that she copied. But we see a flashback of Ushio being bullied because she's a foreigner. She messes these people up, and her childhood teacher says, yo, don't use these hands to punch. But back in real time, the kids are staring at 3 shadows, one being Miss Hidobuchi and the other 2 being some of the kids. But Ushio swipes through and grabs one of the kids, saving his life. But Miss Hidobuchi uses her shadow ability, and she throws a knife at Shin, barely cutting his face, but he shoots her shadow. And she left Shin in the tree like Naruto did to that one girl. But after the kids go on about their day, they see blood leading to a body. And out of nowhere, Ushio gets Hane's eye, saying that eating more strangers won't heal her. But after they group up to share information, nobody ran into any shadows besides Shin and Ushio. So since the shadows are in hiding waiting for the festival, they decide to go up to the shrine to speak to Kiri himself to cancel the festival. But Shin and Kiri are chopping it up like nothing happened. He even asked him what type of games you like.
I play creative destruction every now and then, and last night, I don't know why, but I was on H1Z1.
But then we find out the lore about how Hiruko got here. There was some organism out in space, and it just was known for copying objects. But one day it decided to copy a whale, and that same whale floated ashore. And a fisherman's daughter walked up to that whale and got copied herself. But Shin tells him, that's true, I don't know why you're laughing, and he throws him 2 photos. He's like, they killed my parents and they're gonna kill everybody at the festival tomorrow. And we see the same guy years ago walk up to her on the beach, and there's a copy that takes her off of the map. And when he looks at the other photo, it's him and Hane. Hizuru thought Kiri was Shide because she said she always had a bad feeling around him. And we find out that this guy and Hane have been doing you know what for all these years so he can stay alive, implanting his construct into each child. Like, disgusting, man. Look, I'm not even gonna go into detail. And we find out more about the famine that Hane spoke about. They were starving and couldn't find fish, so Hane just turned people into shadows so they could get food. And that's how people ended up worshiping her. But Shide says the reason your parents are dead is because they found Hiruko's grotto and they try to make it public. But would you have liked if I made them shadows? But after he asks if he can move, that's when Ushio comes out of her Pokeball and slices his face in half, and he dies with a smile. And after this happens, she decides to call Hizuru to let her know what happened. happened, but her shadow gets stabbed. And all Shin can do is scream and shoot at him. He's even clicking after the gun ran out of ammo, but Shide caught every single bullet, and he throws his spear into Shin's chest, sending him out of the building. And the original plan was just to kill him on the spot, but Shin wanted to talk. And after Shin goes flying past Ranoske, he lands in the tree. And when he loops back one more time, he's right in front of the kids again, but this time he looped without Ushio. And Hane watched this all, so she calls a bunch of shadows to the area since Shin is at the edge of time, and if he dies, he can't loop. So when they go into attack, Shin reaches and they stop, and they end up leaving the area. And when Shin looks at what he grabbed, it was Ushio's necklace. So he goes to call everybody to let them know what happened, and he says, meet me in 30 minutes. But then we see the person that called them was Hane. But the real Shin goes home and asks Alan, where did everybody go? He tells them that they went to meet him, and that's when he remembers in one of the loops that Hane copied him. And when he's upstairs, he hears Shadow Mio's voice, and after freeing her, she shares her memories with him, and Mio pinned her to the ground because since Ushio died, she thought that she would go insane. But then he gets a call from Hizuru, and it's Hane on the phone, and she tells him basically Mio and So are at a botanical garden. You know, they're sightseeing right now, but I sent someone there to meet them. Hizuru and the rest are at Torajima Island, so who do you want to save? But we see So and Mio at the garden with Shide, and Shide's just saying these vegetables are nice, but yeah, I'm gonna kill y'all. And on Hizuru's side of things, they're all like, Shin's probably dead, but I'll still investigate. So she crosses, and Hane's trying to act like she's Shin, but she's like, drop that act, bro, I know it's you. And she reminds her, this is the same spot 14 years ago where I said I'd kill you if you came back. So Shide tries to sneak up on Ranoske, but he dodges the attack. He follows up, but Shide barely dodges the fatal attack. After Shide goes in for a stab, he jumps and dodges yet again. But the reason Ranoske can see 2 seconds into the future is because when Hane let out that information, she wasn't in her right mind and printed it at the wrong date. But Hane can also see this, so it's basically useless in this fight. And that's when we find out that Shide's armor is made of shadow. So he flash steps and he's dashing around Ranoske, but he dodges the stab. He follows through with a kick, but Ranoske dodges that as well. But that's when Shide equips a gun and Ranoske throws out the hammer so it gets shot instead of him. But since there's a time lag for Hane to communicate this information to Shide, all he has to do is move faster. So after Ranoske dashes in, dodging the bullet, he catches the hammer and hits Shide clean in the chin. And a follow-up to the head, taking Shide out of the game. But Shide responds instantly. But Hizuru's body is being torn up from Ranosuke's power. And Hizuru says, just take over, do whatever you gotta do. Ranoske dodges 2 bullets from Shide, then destroys his gun with his hammer. And after dodging Shide's follow-up, Shide's kick destroys Ranosuke's weapon. But he grabs Shide's weapon and hops right back in. He pierces Shide's body up, leaving him with holes. And he spins his weapon to stunt real quick and then cuts Shide at the leg. And after jumping up with the spear to come down for an attack, Hane dodges the attack. But when Hane asks why she came back, all she has to say is, one, I'm not telling you. When Ranoske died, nobody blamed me, but it was low-key my fault, so killing you will make it up to him. But Hizuru says Shide talked about his ending in one of the loops, and Hane gets a little shaken up by this, but Shide's like, nah, it's nothing for real. Let's just kill this guy. So after Shide dashes in, Hizuru breaks the weapon, and after dodging Shide's attack, she puts her hand on his head, sending Ranosuke's shadow inside of him, and he tears off a chunk of Shide, and Tokiko arrives with an attack. But back on Shin's side of things, he makes it to the other Shide, and he's like, oh yeah, I sent Mio and So into Hiroko's grotto, so Shadow Mio kills him in a heartbeat. And after she tries to scan him, there's no memories, not even of the conversation that they just had, and Mio's original body ends up dying. But Shin doesn't want to reset, but they run into an injured Tokiko that says, yeah, we got cooked, and Mio scans her to show Shin that, yeah, they got cooked. So Shin decides to restart, and when he restarts, he stops Mio and So from even meeting Shide. But Shin and Shadow Mio decide to go to Hizuru, and after a knife goes flying out that Shide easily deflects, Shin and Mio enter the battle. But that's when Shin looks and he sees Hizuru dying. Shide says, thank you for looping, it actually made this fight easy. It was like fighting Sakazo after the 50th time. Shide throws a knife that Mio easily catches, and this is when a glowing light comes from Shin, and Hane and Shide decide to leave the scene, and that's when Hizuru says, it's up to you from here on out, and oh yeah, I'm gonna leave Ranoske in your care. But when Shin's talking to Shadow Mio, she says she senses a shadow in his pocket, and he pulls out Ushio's necklace, and she's saying that there's memories stored in here, but only Ushio can access them. And that's when Shin looks out on the beach and remembers the 24th and says Ushio will return on the 24th. So still trying to shoot his shot, but he gets rejected like Tomodachi Life, and he decides to be a W wingman and send Mio to the roof where Shin is. And after she shoots her shot, she gets rejected just like So did, like it's Tomodachi Life, like I just said. And we find out more about Shin's ability, and that's when he dies, the world he was in gets copied and sent over to a new one, meaning that there are 2 Ushios that exist. But he's saying that the shell is moving south. So when they get in position for this, Ranoske is talking to Nezu through Shin. He's saying, don't worry, I'm gonna get back for you. We will take a W here. But Hane says that she can't find Shin, so she tells Shide to find Ushio before they do. So while one Shide's at the festival, another Shide is underwater searching for Shin. But when Shide spots this stray, Shin also realizes that he's getting closer to Ushio, and Ushio's having flashbacks saying that she wished she got to see Shin. But that's when she wakes up and Shinpei screaming out her name. After the stray grabs onto Ushio, Shide's trying to attack, but the stray is bobbing and weaving underwater like Michael Phelps. And eventually it breaks through to the surface, and Shinpei grabs Ushio, and the stray gets split in half by Shide. After Shinpei throws throws her necklace in the sky, and after she gets her memories back, Shide tries to let out an attack, but Ushio uses her hair to split through all of his arms, protecting them and keeping them safe. And after all of the strays attack, Ushio takes each and every single one off of the mat. So after they safely land on the stray, Ushio decides to go in herself and attack, but Shadow Mio saves her life and brings her back and gives her memories. And Shin asks Hane and Shide, where do y'all think I came from? And since they couldn't track him, they don't know. Alright, that's smooth. I'ma see y'all later. And he gets a gun from Ushio, but Hane tries to stop this and tells Shide to shoot, but Shin dodges the bullet and he restarts the loop. But their plan was to start the save point in Hiruko's grotto, so when Shin came back, he could just bring Ushio with him. And Hane didn't like this one bit, but this would delay the massacre at the festival and give them time to kill Hane. But in Hiruko's grotto, they get attacked by a shadow, and Tokiko says that she'll hold it off. When they continue moving forward, they run into Hiruko's flesh and they can't get past it, but Shadow Mio came in clutch with fireworks and blows the wall up. But Shide and Hane are on their tail falling through the sky, and when they enter Hiruko's grotto, Shin shoots at Shide, but he blocks it, and they end up getting him to a point where Nezu just has to stay behind and hold him off. But from above, Shide drops down with an attack, but Ushio blocks it. While Ushio's attacking Shide, he's dodging each and every single attack, and that's when Shinpei notices Hane standing on a rock. But Hane thinks she's 20 steps ahead. She notices Mio behind her, so she dodges the stab, and she senses a shadow and shoots out a nail gun thinking that she got somebody. And after she lands on the wall, her shadow gets pinned to the wall by So. And after Mio drops down with a split to Hane, but Ushio punches Shide, sending him flying back, and this man's saying he's having the time of his life. But that's when Hane's all alone and Ushio goes flying in for the finishing blow. But that's when she has the flashback that I told you before of Miss Hirobuchi, and she pulls her punch, letting Hane survive. Shide lost his armor though, so that's a W, and Mio stabs him in the head. Never mind, he got it back and he's alive. But both Shin and Ushio now have red eyes. But Hiruko's regressed, and Shide saying that he no longer needs her, so he throws her against the wall. So Ushio jumps in, but Shin hops in quicker, going for a punch. But that's when Shide stabs Hiruko and splits open a gate into their home world. And he tells Ushio, you really are the egg. I'm gonna need that eye from you because you awakened. But oh yeah, fight me in here. And humans aren't supposed to be in this realm. They will die. But Shin goes in with Ushio to see it through to the end. And in this world, there is no flow of time, so if Shin dies, he's dead for good. But he gives Ranoske full control of his body, and they end up seeing Hane's ball and decide to follow it and end up going to a town. They're surrounded by shadows, but they're not attacking them, so they're all good. But they run into Ushio, and she's transforming into Hane. And Ranoske said Hizuru said to kill Ushio if she ever becomes Hane, but Shin stops him. Hane tells him that 14 years ago, she got split into Hiruko, which is the evil her, and Hane, which is the normal her. And oh yeah, Ranoske, your 2-second thing doesn't work here. But Ushio says when she scans Shide, his plan is to just end the world completely. That's why he wants my eye. And that's when raid sirens come out of nowhere. There's an airstrike going on attacking them, but Ushio protects them. Shadows can't take damage in the everlasting night, but he's using Hiruko's memories to fight against them. But since Hane is linked to Hiruko, she can stop this. So when Hane stops the air raid, that's when Ushio jumps up through the sky. She's jumping off the missiles to get closer to Shide, but planes arrive and start shooting her, damaging her. But that's when she jumps through one plane to the next and splits clean through Shide in the process. But since there's nothing inside of Shide, that attack did no damage. And he jumps over and destroys Ushio in the process, leaving her as just an eye. But right when he reaches for the eye, just in time, Ushio comes back to grab it. But when she touches him, she erases the memory of the air raid, making the planes fall down. But she lets everyone know Shide's real body isn't here right now. But Shin comes up with a plan to completely erase him and they can win, but Ushio passed out mid-air. And the reason Ushio's regressing is because she's losing her power and can't fight anymore. And Ushio says she'll infuse the shotgun bullets with her hacking ability, but they have to hold off for 2 minutes. So Shide bomb rushes them. Ranoske is shooting at him, but obviously is doing no damage since he's empty. He dodges the punch thrown out by Shide, and he sees the follow through and dodges that too. Hold on, you thought he just dodged one? He dodges another. After he jumps back to dodge the perilous attack, Shide goes in for Ushio, but Ranoske gets a hammer from Ushio and slams it on Shide's head. After he recovers from that, he pulls out a musket, and Ranoske tries to get behind him, but he splits through his hammer in a heartbeat. And Shide regenerates his arm to shoot at Ranoske mid-air, but he dodges, and he dodges another shot with a back handspring. But after he dodges one bullet, he dashes back in, dodging another. He comes in with an overhead attack, but Shide dodges it too. Shide dodges the follow-up, then blocks the follow-up to the follow-up. Ranoske hits a spin attack that Shide dodges, and he dodges the unseen hand that came out of nowhere. But when Shide goes to grab Ushio again, Ranoske slams his hand to the ground and punches him, sending him flying back, but this damages Ranosuke's hand. And Shide shoots one last bullet, and it barely misses Ranoske, but Ushio tells him to turn around. And Ranoske tries to dodge, but he still gets his arm cut off. But he's just getting cut up by Shide and damaged in the process. I don't think he's gonna make that 1 minute. But that's when Shinpei says it's time to make that comeback your sister was talking about. He says, you have the ability to possess bodies, right? After Ranoske dodges an attack from Shide, he dodges another mid-air. So after he lands, he dashes in and he manages to get cut, but he still manages to touch Shide and start hacking him from the inside out. But that's that's when Shide says, oh, too bad. And he splits him off of him, sending him across the area. And Shide says, Hizuru tried that same thing. Look at her now. And the shotgun is too far from Shin. And time is running out because his body is starting to break down. But Shinpei still standing 10 toes. He says, this victory right here will be Ushio's victory. And Shide says, let me tell you something real quick. I'm ending the world so I can get the ending I want to see. I don't know what's going to happen after I go and Hane leaves, so I just want to see how it ends right now. But that's when Ushio finishes the hacking bullet, so Shinpei starts running after the shotgun. But right when he's about to grab it, he's about to get stabbed by Shide. But Ushio's inside of the shotgun and she's trying to get it to move. And eventually she ends up throwing the shotgun up and Shin catches it. And he's seeing the memories of all of his friends through every loop, and he's saying their actions weren't meaningless. So after he rolls out of the way of Shide's attack, and we see Shinpei ready his shotgun and Ushio's holding it too. And with one blast to Shide, the hacking bullet follows the line all the way back to the original body, and it takes it off the map as well. But that's when Ushio picks up Hiruko's body, and they go back to the day the whale washed on shore. They see the real Hane on that same day, but Shinpei's like, yo, go home. He interfered with the past. Ushio decides to go up to the whale and erase it so none of this could ever happen. And after the whale disappears, this is when Hiruko's body disappears, and after that it's just Shin and Ushio alone on the beach. Ushio's telling him, yo, I had a fun time this summer. And while Shin tries to say the same things to her, she disappears as well. But Ushio says when she still has the awakened eye, she has to go back and rewrite history. But we see his eye being erased, and that's when Ushio says, I gotta go. And after seeing all of Shinpei's memories, he wakes up on the ferry yet again. After he calls her Ranoske Nagumo, she's like, how do you know that name? And he's crying saying, thank God you're alive. But she tells him she doesn't even know him, and he's like, hold on, how do I know her name? And when he touches down on the 22nd yet again, Mio comes to greet him, and he gets ready to block her bike, but she uses her brakes because there's nothing wrong with her brakes. And that's when Ushio herself runs up to greet him. When he walks into Bistro Kafune, he's seeing everybody in there as well. He goes to the Koba Mart and all the kids are alive. We get to see them happy. One of the kids says tomorrow's the festival and Hane's birthday, but that's when he decides to go to the shrine and he's talking to the Karakiris themselves. But his son, that doesn't look like a one-to-one replica of him because he's a regular human being, not a hybrid between a shadow, says Ushio's on the beach looking for a necklace right now. Go look for her. So when Shinpei makes it to the beach, she apologizes to her and she told him that 2 days ago she had a dream where she thought she'd never see him again. And when Shin's about to say he had that same dream, she grabs his shadow, but he grabs hers back and they find that same necklace. But when Shin goes back to talk to Hizuru again, he's telling her about these dreams and she's saying she had the same weird ones. And that's when Ranoske and Asako walk in and they have a daughter named Hane. But now it's time for the summer festival itself. And just like usual, So's still trying to propose his love to Mio. And So tells Shin and Ushio to go to the beach so they don't hear the confession. And Shin brings the food that he was talking about before. And after Shin says it reminds me of that one time we were in the clinic and I promised I would buy you all the food you wanted. And they both say at the same time, I promise I'll buy you 10 or 100 of them, and the fireworks go off. They got their memories back from the shadow incident. And the next day is Ushio's birthday party. I'm not gonna lie, for an anime like this, I did not expect a happy ending. And first watch through, I was low-key a little mad. But when I heard about the theory that Ushio just jumped them into a timeline that all worked, because you know the butterfly effect and stuff like that, I was fine with it. Let me know how y'all feel about summertime rendering. The creator has another work named Ghost Fixers. I might tap into that, maybe read it. But like, sub, this was a long vid, and I'm gonna see y'all in 2 weeks.